Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paravajikacharya Ashtotar to the Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paravajikacharya Ashtotar to the Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Chad, do me a favor. Run this into the walk-in for me. Freezing, colder. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On the 16th day of June, 2025 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in Chapter 4, Transcendental Knowledge, Text 34, page 220. Okay, 220. Okay. Tad vidhi patipaneta. Tad vidhi pranipatena. Pariprashnena sevaya. Upadekshanti te jnanam. Jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. Tadvidhi pranipatena. Pariprashnena sevaya. Upadekshanti te jnanam. Jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. Tadvidhi pranipatena. Pariprashnena sevaya. Upadekshanti te jnanam. Jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. Tadvidhi pranipatena. Pariprashnena sevaya. Upadekshanti te jnanam. Jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. Tadvidhi pranipatena. Pariprashnena sevaya. Upadekshanti te jnanam. Jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. Page 220. Go ahead, Ami. Tadvidhi pranipatena. Pariprashnena sevaya. Upadekshanti te jnanam. Jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. Tadvidhi pranipatena. Pariprashnena sevaya. Upadekshanti te jnanam. Jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. Anyone online? I guess all of our lines are here. Okay. Did you want to try? Not yet. Okay. All right, I'll read the word by words. Tat, that knowledge of different sacrifices. Vidhi, try to understand. Pranipatena, by approaching a spiritual master. Pariprashnena, by submissive inquiries. Sevaya, by the rendering of service. Upadekshanti, they will initiate. Te, you, jnanam, into knowledge. Jnaninaha, the self-realized. Tattva, of the truth. Darshinaha, seers. Translation. Lord Krishna says to Arjuna, just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. Purport. The path of spiritual realization is undoubtedly difficult. The Lord therefore advises us to approach a bona fide spiritual master in the line of disciplic succession from the Lord himself. No one can be a bona fide spiritual master without following this principle of disciplic succession. The Lord is the original spiritual master, and a person in the disciplic succession can convey the message of the Lord as it is to his disciple. No one can be spiritually realized by manufacturing his own process, as is the fashion of the foolish pretenders. The Bhagavatam 6.3.19 says, Dharmam tu sakshad bhagavat pranitam. The path of religion is directly enunciated by the Lord. Therefore, mental speculation or dry arguments cannot help lead one to the right path. Nor by independent study of books of knowledge can one progress in spiritual life. One has to approach a bona fide spiritual master to receive the knowledge. Such a spiritual master should be accepted in full surrender, and one should serve the spiritual master like a menial servant without false prestige. Satisfaction of the self-realized spiritual master is the secret of advancement in spiritual life. Inquiries and submission constitute the proper combination for spiritual understanding. Unless there is submission and service, inquiries from the learned spiritual master will not be effective. One must be able to pass the test of the spiritual master, and when he sees the genuine desire of the disciple, he automatically blesses the disciple with genuine spiritual understanding. In this verse, both blind following and absurd inquiries are condemned. Not only should one hear submissively from the spiritual master, but one must also get a clear understanding from him in submission and service and inquiries. A bona fide spiritual master is by nature very kind toward the disciple. Therefore, when the student is submissive and is always ready to render service, the reciprocation of knowledge and inquiries becomes perfect. Om Ejnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. That verse could very well be a quotable verse on this purport in verse. So this is one of the most quoted verses in this chapter, and it very distinctly describes the necessity of having a spiritual master, a guru. And not just any guru, but someone who is tattvadarshi, someone who has seen the truth, who has actually had a revelation, who's highly realized in the truth. And what is the quality of the spiritual master? Well, he's full of compassion. He's an ideal sadhu. What are the sadhu qualities? Titikshava, karunika, suridak sarvadehinam. Ajata shatravak shanta, saravak sarabhushana. So this is the, sarabhushana means like the ornaments of the character and the qualities of a genuine sadhu. And it's clear from the Bhagavad Gita, apichet surarasharo bhajate mamananya bhak, sadhu reva samantavyak samyak bhavati sarvata. That in this verse from the 9th chapter, Krishna says, even if someone may have some real faults in his character, his or her character, if someone is very strictly and enthusiastically practicing devotional service, then that person should be considered a sadhu. And the discrepancies will be cleared away quickly. So that's the idea there. So let's see. Let's analyze this first. Tad vidhi. What is the tad? It's going back a verse. All the details about sacrifice. You remember Krishna talking about different sacrifices. And we learn in this chapter, in text 9, important verses, Yagyartat karmanon yatra loko yam karma bandhana tadartam karma konteya mukta sangha samachara. So what that verse says is that whatever work you're doing has to be in the mood of sacrifice. In other words, without that desire to enjoy the fruits. That's the fruit of activity. And that kind of mentality will bring us back again and again to birth and death. Because you can never be satisfied, you can never have enough, and what desires you cultivate, material desires, they're with you in your mind when you leave this body. You're inevitably unfulfilled, and you come back, if you're fortunate, a human being. So that's the knowledge, that's what the tat refers to, the knowledge of different sacrifices. And we see that in the practice of Bhakti Yoga, sacrifice is central. It's also very prominent in Karma Kanda, sacrifice in order to go to heavenly planets and enjoy like anything. And we have a reflection of that even on the material plane, right? All right, I know that I'm now a freshman in high school, and I know that from what happened to my older brother, that I don't want to, flunk out. So, and then, now we don't know where he is now. So I want to get into a good school. I went through 4 years of high school, every day this is drummed into us. Do your work and everything like that. And so that's a sacrifice. You're sacrificing your time. You're not going to the parties. This year, it's sacrifice. Everybody's sacrificing. But what are people doing in this city? They're also sometimes on the highway at 4 o'clock. We're in the getting ready to come to Mangalartik or whatever, they're chanting around. But life is a sacrifice. You have to sacrifice the immediate pleasure for some ultimate good. That's the basic idea. So that's the Shreyas and Preyas principle, right? Preyas is like, think of little children. They want to have, pleasure now. And if it's taken away, if they can't get the ice cream or anything, So that's immediate pleasure. But when you get a little older, you think, the long term. The parents are always saying, from experience, you have to be long term. So you sacrifice your immediate pleasure, you study hard, and then you can get into a good school and so forth like that. So sacrifice is central to successful material or spiritual success. But sacrifice is the spiritual sacrifice is called yajna, and so is that a name of Vishnu. That's also a name of Vishnu, which is very interesting. Is that which means you can't understand Vishnu, you can't begin to understand unless you accept the principle of sacrifice. Sacrificing your immediate pleasure, undergoing austerities, right? They're very close. To undergo tapasya is also a sacrifice of the immediate pleasures. So the principle that Lord Chaitanya brought is this Sankirtan Yajna, which has the, Vedic sacrifices. Traditionally, they have to be overseen by the learned Brahmins. And a joke I kind of make, because my whole career has been finding mistakes, and fixing them. So that's a blessed, dovetailing of my fault-finding, tendency. But as you may or may not know, in these sacrifices, you have the Brahmins chanting the mantras, but then there's referees. There's other Brahmins who are watching those Brahmins, yes, chanting. And as soon as there's a discrepancy, no, it's supposed to be chanted this way. Because we learned from the pastime of Vishwarup, who was, he became the guru of the demigods. After Indra, he offended Brihaspati by not getting off his throne. He walked in and Indra was in the middle of being, enjoying or whatever. So Brihaspati just walked out. He turned on his ankle, on his heel, and went out and left. And no, they couldn't find him. And because they couldn't find their guru, they were weakened. Then the demons took advantage of that. So in order to recoup, they were advised, you need to have another spiritual master. So they begged, I forget, isn't the father of Vishwarup, name escapes me at the moment. But he encouraged his son, okay, you can become their advisor and their spiritual master, So he was, but the problem was, is that he had, in his lineage, he had some demons in there. So he would sometimes also offer, homages and prayers and things to the demons. So Indra, he's spying on him. He's behind a pillar and he's listening to him, and he sees that he's offering these oblations to the demons. What's this, And Indra, as Indra does, he flies off the handle, cuts off his, not head, but heads. He had 3. And each one turned into a different kind of partridge. That's what's in the Bhagavad Gita. I don't blame me. So that was, so when Vishwa's father, and forgive me, I forget the name, when his father, who advised him to do this, heard about this, he was incensed. And so he organized a sacrifice to invoke a demon who would then kill Indra. You see? But because he was so upset, he chanted 1 syllable or 2 syllables wrong, and instead of getting a demon who would kill Indra, he got a devotee. He got a demon who was actually a devotee inside, named Vitrasura, who would fight Indra, but then be killed by Indra, all because he didn't chant one thing correctly. You see, this is important. That's why I always, I don't always stress it, but sometimes, you were here, I was. Okay, Brindayai, Tulsi Devyai. If you don't say Devyai, which you hear a lot of Devais. Some of the old timers I hear do the Devais before, And they've been chanting that way for 50 years, Devai. Devai is the demigods. Devyai, that Y in there used to be an I, that's the Devi in Tulsi Devi. You see? So every little syllable is important if you want to get the final result. So anyway, Tadvidi pradipatena. Now, so there's a formula here, the surrender. I once talked about this, and it's worth repeating. There's a book by Sanatana Goswami called Krishna Lila Stava. It's very nice. It's a summary of Krishna's Vrindavan Lila up to the killing of Kamsa, which is, of course, in Mathura, but that's it. In summary form, simple verses, like these simple Bhagavad Gita verses, but he weaves in there obeisances. You know, every few verses is another Namo Namaha, like that. So my good friend Gopi Puranadana Babu, my co-worker, he translated that book. And in the beginning, he gave some quotes, I think it's from Padma Purana, about the real meaning of offering obeisances. Namaha, you see, that's the word. But there's different levels of Namaha. Like the example, you go, has anyone ever flown on Indian Airlines? You probably flew on Indian Airlines at times. I did. The last time I flew on Indian Airlines, I was sitting in the seat and they started pulling back and then they stopped. You know how they pull back and then they get... And they said, "Oh, we're sorry, we forgot to put gas in, you know, the fuel up the plane." Thank you very much. Well, I'm glad you noticed it when you're still on the ground that you didn't have this much gas. Anyway, so when you go in there, they have we used to call stewardesses, you know, stewardess. So it's namaste, namaste, right? Something like that, namaste. That's the most superficial kind of offering obeisances. Now, the ultimate obeisances, which is not recommended for ladies, as they may have learned, is full dandavats, you know, like this. What is it? Sashtanga, yes. Six parts of your body are supposed to touch. I don't know, the forehead, the chest, the knees, and everything. And so that's the ultimate in obeisances. But also the very word, namaha, it means not mine. It's not mine. This body is not mine. It's yours. Oh, Srila Prabhupada, deities, whoever you're offering obeisance to. It's a serious business. And so that's the pranipatena, you see? Or approaching a spiritual manner, but it really is surrendering the mood. And in addition, there's the query, the questions. Because this goes back to the first sutra of the Vedanta Sutra. Atato brahma jigyasa. That verb jigyasa means inquisitive. One has to be inquisitive. Every species is inquisitive. You know, the birds are, where's the worm, you know, like that. Where's the danger, you know? And they're ready to fly up in the air. You know? So everybody's asking questions, you know. Where are my car keys? You know, where can I get a better job? Whatever. So, but that's, none of those queries will be to your ultimate benefit. They'll keep you bound here, because those kind of queries are simply related to the body or your immediate material situation. But we want to ask the questions like Sanatana Goswami asked. He was the model, you know. He was so learned. I mean, he was very well educated. He knew several languages, Sanskrit and Arabic and whatever. And so was his brother, Rupa. But they had lost their Brahminical quality because they had been kind of coerced. I don't know if you know the story. Because I always wondered, well, why did Rupa and Sanatana, who was so, you know, exalted and great devotees, how did they get into the government of the Nawab? And I have to confirm this, but I heard several times that he threatened to persecute the Brahmins and the Vaishnavas unless they came into because he saw how smart they were. And so they did that for that basis. So what did Sanatana ask? You know, he did first the pranipatena. He put the straw in his mouth, in his teeth. Right. That's a symbol of full surrender, of submission. When he met Lord Chaitanya in Prayag, not Prayag, in Benares, and so then he asked, "Keami kene amai japatara try that? Who am I, and why am I suffering? If I don't know the answer to these questions, all of my erudition and everything is useless." So he understood that this is the perfect model. You know, who am I? What is the meaning of life? What should I really strive for? These are the questions that you ask of a guru. And if you ask the wrong person, you're asking that same questions to your high school teacher or something. That, oh yes, you should work very hard, and get good grades, and then you'll succeed in life. But you won't succeed in life. You'll fail. It'll be a tragic failure. That's the, what is that? Nirdeham adhyam sulabham sudurlabham. This is a wonderful verse. There are several boat verses. I think I found 4 in the Bhagavatam, and they're all worth meditating on. So this is a very famous one, which Krishna himself speaks. Nirdeham adhyam sulabham sudurlabham klavam sukalpam guru karna dharam. Mayanukulyena nabasviteritam puman bhavabdim nataret sa atmaha. Atmaha means you can't kill the soul, but it's spiritual suicide. Atmaha. So what is he saying there? Nrideham. Who can guess what that means? I'm sorry? Nrideham. Not a deham. Human body. Adhyam. Adhyam means endowed with many good features and useful features. Nideham adhyam, sulabham sudurlabham. Now this is kind of a play on words because these are 2 opposite words. One is sudurlabham, very difficult to get, but sulabham means easy to get, sudurlabham means very difficult to get. Well, which is it? Well, it's a little of both. Sulabham means every soul eventually comes to the human form. So in that sense, you're going to get it eventually. But sudurlabham means rare. Just among, there's this business of 400,000 species of human life, that has to be researched because there's verses where it says there's only 1 species of human life. So maybe that species is different varieties. I don't know. But, you're going to come to the human form of life, but then what? What family will be born in? How are you going to be trained? Because the special quality of the human life is the intelligence. Compare us to, whether it's any of the fishes or any of the... Nobody has... It's the intelligence that's different. We can't fly, we can't swim like the fish, but we can think. We can contemplate what's the meaning of life, why are we suffering, how can I end it, is there a way of it? So sulabham sudurlabham. So it's automatically attained, but still very rare. So don't waste it. Plavam is the boat. Sukalpam, very nicely constructed. In other words, this boat, this body with the big brain and everything, and the tongue and the ears, and all the senses, is perfectly suited for going over the ocean of birth and death and getting to the other side of birth and death, meaning the Vaikuntha. So he's saying that plavam sukalpam, very nicely constructed, guru karda dhanam. Now you need a captain for the boat, the spiritual master. See, that's spoken of in this verse. So what about the favorable winds? This is sailboat. There's no motors in the boat. It's a sailboat, big sailboat. Maya anukulyena nabasviteritam. My words in the Shastra, in the Bhagavad Gita, and even if it's not directly quoted by Krishna, they're still coming from Krishna, inspired Vyasadevi's incarnation. So Mayanukulyena, favorable winds, Mayanukulyena nabasviteritam. Then, so we've got the wonderful boat, we've got the capable captain, the realized soul, Tattvadarshi, and we've got Krishna's words. Then it says, Puman, that human being, Bhavabdim, the ocean of birth and death, Nataret, does not cross, sa atmaha, is committing spiritual suicide. You can't really kill the soul, but millions of years you could waste, you could lose it, So that's a very powerful verse. I'm not going to go through the other ship verse, maybe in the other classes. But it's like a boat. It means that we're in an ocean, right? Or you can take the other very nice analogy of burning forest fire, There's one boat verse that uses both of those, that those who are eager to cross over, get out of this burning forest fire of material life and cross the ocean of birth and death, there's only one boat. He said, this is only one boat. You know what it is? It's in the 12th canto. This is Sangsara Sindhum Atidusta Damuti Tirsham. Those who are eager to cross over the very difficult to cross over ocean of birth and death, of samsara, samsara sindhum, right? Samsara sindhum, Ati dustaram, very difficult to cross over. Ati dustaram. Dustaram is difficult, and ati is very difficult. But they're uttitishur, they're eager to cross over. Sangsara siddham ati dustam uttitisham. I'm sorry, I forgot the Sanskrit. But he says there's only one boat to do it. There's only one boat. And that is cultivating the desire to hear the pastimes of Lord Krishna. If you can get more and more attracted to that, so that you don't really feel right unless you're hearing and chanting them, then that will absorb your mind in Krishna Lila and it'll take you back. That'll be the boat. Okay, so here we're discussing this first. So then we have, so what do we do with that Tattvadarshi? Pranipatena, surrender. And a good model is Arjuna. Chapter 2, text 7, I believe, where he was arguing with Krishna. No, if I'll become very sinful, all these men will die, and I'll kill my beloved guru and grandfather. This can't be good, And he had all reasons, and the Pitris won't get worshipped properly, and the Shraddha ceremonies, and I'll be responsible. And so he was arguing. He wasn't pranipatena. But then he surrendered. Said, I don't want to argue with you anymore, I'm accepting you as a spiritual master. And the difference is that you can't argue with a spiritual master. That's why you have to be careful to get someone who's really qualified, who knows and who has seen the absolute truth, realized, and is not going to cheat you. So the surrender and the queries, the questions, and service. This is the formula. He can impart that knowledge into you about all these sacrifices, about Krishna consciousness, because he is jnanina, he's self-realized with knowledge, and tattvadarshi. He's actually seen within himself or externally the absolute truth. So that's very important. Now, Prabhupada in the purport, he discusses some very, very important things. So it's a difficult path. You need a guide. Approach a bona fide spiritual master. No one can be bona fide. And in other words, without impeding. Prabhupada uses he usually says, transparent via medium. But via media is a I think the bias can go. A transparent medium. Medium is someone who is a channel, right? Without distorting, he's giving it in such a way that you can understand it. That's the key. Now, Prabhupada's most important quality in that regard, his activity, is giving it to us in English. Because that English then became the root language. Now it's translated into many languages. Otherwise, if he just spoke Bengali to us, what were we going to do? It wouldn't help. So in that way, he was, he had studied English. He had studied English philosophy in school, and that was a boon. So that was a silver lining to the British Raj, that they made the intelligent young men learn English. So that's the first thing. And then there has to be service as well, because that service opens your heart. It opens a channel for receiving the message and acting on it. So surrender and inquiry and service. Then such a tattvadarshi, spiritual master, can impart knowledge to you. And here Prabhupada says, no one can be spiritually realized by manufacturing his own process. So that's the tattvadarshi, the generous, must come in the line of spiritual masters, of realized spiritual masters. That's the disciple. And Prabhupada, it's not an accident that he put that at the end of the introduction. That goes all the way back to Krishna, begins with Krishna. And then he quotes this verse. He loved to quote this. This is spoken by Yamaraj. It's right, I think, right before or after the verse enumerating the 12 Mahajans. There's 12 Mahajans, and Shukadev and Vamana is in there, I think. And of course, Prahlad Maharaj, Brahma. So they are, generally the spiritual master must be coming down from one of them. There's 4 disciplic successions. We can learn about that. Krishna is always the original. He's the original one. And it's very important that we know Krishna is speaking directly here and in the Bhagavatam. He also has a wonderful, in the Bhagavad Gita, where he's giving Uddhava the same kind of direct instruction. There's wonderful instruction there for us. And whatever else instructions there is coming from Krishna through the disciplic succession. It's all coming from Krishna. He's the original guru, Adi Guru, everyone. Okay, not simply by independent study of books. We were all, in my generation, the 60s, everyone was checking it out. I got the Tibetan Book of the Dead, I read that, that was far out. And then I got the little Penguin Gita, no purports, just the translation. Well, that was far out, I didn't know what to do after that. And then, so there needs to be realized commentary that can give you something that will apply to your life. Not by independent books of thought knowledge. This sentence became very important, which was omitted in the original editing of this Bhagavad Gita. The whole Ritvik movement, that grew up in the 80s, and we had our original gurus had some problems. They want to do independent study of books of knowledge, and that constitutes my initiation by Prabhupada. Just studying his books. Anyway, there's a verse that seems to imply that, but it doesn't. No, one has to approach a living spiritual master, receive the knowledge, and accept it in full surrender. Then satisfaction of the self-will spiritual master. Now think of, if those of you who have been here for the morning program, the Guru Puja has this, Guru Mokha Padma Bhaka Chitta Tekoriya Aikya. Is one of the most important lines. Let the words of your spiritual master be one with your mind. Be completely in agree with it. You hear and then you adopt in your life. Mokha Padma Bhaka Chitta Tekoriya Arnakoriya Manayasha. And don't desire any other words, or any words that conflict with that, you see. So that's a very important aspect of surrender, is to accept, the instructions, even though they might not be exactly what we would want in our, getting up so early and all of these different things, fasting. But then here's the key phrase. Satisfaction of the self-realized spiritual master is the secret of advancement in spiritual life. Inquiries and submission constitute the proper combination for spiritual understanding. So you got the surrender and the inquiries and the submission and service. So this is a very important verse we can study. And this is the key to understanding. This is all about transcendental knowledge. If you want to really get to transcendental knowledge, this is the formula for getting it and having it realized. Now, we should always remember Krishna is in our heart. One thing that Lord Chaitanya says to Sanatani teaches that we can't hear the super soul. Super soul is in there trying to give us good advice, but we're like the two birds in the tree. Our attention is trying to enjoy the fruits. We don't want to hear the big bird, behind us. No. So of course he's giving us intelligence and remembrance and everything. But so he comes outside in the form of the realized guru and the Shastra, so that we can access that knowledge. And that was Prabhupada's great gift. Both his personal association is more than invaluable, and his permanent association in the form of these books. So we should take full advantage. Okay, any questions, comments? You have something, otherwise you want to grab the mic.
Hare Krishna. It says in the verse here, one must be able to pass the test of the spiritual master. What could the test be?
What is that test? Well, if he says chant 16 rounds, you have to aspire, work up to that, and sing it. And the thing is, there's that that whole important point. I mean, you can't get around it, of initiation, because that's also essential. To be aspiring for that, because that's what's critical about that, is that you get a new identity. That's why you get a new name, and you're confirmed. It's just like, isn't there something in the Catholic Church with confirmation or something like that? You don't know, right? You know that, yeah. It's like that, but it's more serious, because it's like what does it mean to surrender? It means that, okay, your desire is now my desire. I'm going to put my own separate desire aside, and that's what it means to surrender to Krishna, to take your pleasure in the pleasure of the Lord. Your interest, you put aside your own separate desires, material desires, and you take on, you embrace the aspiration of the Lord and His representative. We saw that with the development of book distribution. It wasn't easy, and devotees had no idea how to do it at first. And there were some pioneers, I think, the names escape me now, but the Krishna book, that was a very attractive book with all those illustrations and everything, So there were some devotees up in the San Francisco area. They had to stop for gas, and they found out, oh my God, we just filled the tank. In those days they would fill it for you sometimes, So the guy just filled the tank. Oh my God, we don't have any money. So they said, how would you like these books? See these books? So they were able to pay for it by the books. That was the first distribution. And it's difficult, I could never get over the hump with book distribution. So I found a great refuge in book production. I was still contributing, But so that's the test. The test is, can you actually embrace this difficult austerity and pray for the ability to do it? And actually do it. I always point out that, the original test of the cold shower, And not easy. Getting up in the middle of the night, and taking a cold shower. But after a while, and the thing is, when you're able to pass, a test, even if it's a small one, that encourages you, oh, okay, I can really do this, So it's not really the test. There are tests. It's more and more tests. But once you have a certain momentum, and you can see the benefits, you can say, my God, I never thought I would be able to give that up. That was my life and soul. So now I wouldn't even think of doing that. A lot of the drugs was a big thing, to give up at the point, the 4 regs. But that's, there are so many tests, and when you start passing them, you get more and more hope and confidence that Krishna will give you the ability to do it. All right, should we go on? Yagyatva napunarmoham evam yasasi pandava yena bhutan yasheshani Drakshasyatman yato mahi. Having obtained real knowledge from a self-realized soul, you will never fall again into such illusion, for by this knowledge you will see that all living beings are but part of the Supreme, or in other words, that they are mine. Purport. The result of receiving knowledge from a self-realized soul, or one who knows things as they are, is learning that all living beings are parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. The sense of an existence separate from Krishna is called Maya. Ma, not ya, this. Some think that we have nothing to do with Krishna, that Krishna is only a great historical personality, and that the Absolute is the impersonal Brahman. Factually, as it is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, this impersonal Brahman is the personal effulgence of Krishna. Krishna, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the cause of everything. In the Brahma Samhita, it is clearly stated that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes. Even the millions of incarnations are only his different expansions. Similarly, the living entities are also expansions of Krishna. The Mayavadi philosophers wrongly think that Krishna loses his own separate existence in his many expansions. This thought is material in nature. We have experience in the material world that a thing, when fragmentally distributed, loses its own original identity. Prabhupada would always give the example of a big sheet of paper. When you rip it up into pieces, the big sheet is gone. But the Mayavadi philosophers fail to understand that absolute means that 1 plus 1 is equal to 1, and that 1 minus 1 is also equal to 1. This is the case in the absolute world. For one of sufficient knowledge in the absolute science, we are now covered with illusion, and therefore we think that we are separate from Krishna. Although we are separated parts of Krishna, we are nevertheless not different from him. The bodily difference of the living entities is Maya, or not actual fact. We are all meant to satisfy Krishna. By Maya alone, Arjuna thought that the temporary bodily relationship with his kinsman was more important than his eternal spiritual relationship with Krishna. The whole teaching of the Gita is targeted toward this end, that a living being, as Krishna's eternal servitor, cannot be separated from Krishna, and his sense of being an identity apart from Krishna is called Maya, illusion. The living entities, as separate parts and parcels of the Supreme, have a purpose to fulfill. Having forgotten that purpose since time immemorial, they are situated in different bodies, as men, animals, demigods, etc. Such bodily differences arise from forgetfulness of the transcendental service of the Lord. But when one is engaged in transcendental service through Krishna consciousness, one becomes at once liberated from this illusion. One can acquire such pure knowledge only from the bona fide spiritual master, and thereby avoid the delusion that the living entity is equal to Krishna. Perfect knowledge is that the Supreme Soul, Krishna, is the supreme shelter for all living entities, and giving up such shelter, the living entities are deluded by the material energy, imagining themselves to have a separate identity. Thus, under different standards of material identity, they become forgetful of Krishna. When, however, such deluded living entities become situated in Krishna consciousness, it is to be understood that they are on the path of liberation, as confirmed in the Bhagavatam 2.10.6. Muktir hidvanyata rupam swarupena vibhastitihi. Liberation means to be situated in one's constitutional position as an eternal servitor of Krishna, Krishna consciousness. So, this is these purports are so wonderful. So let's see, having obtained real knowledge from self-realized soul. So this is, I was thinking, Om Jnana Timirandasya is a perfect verse for the one I chant all the time. But we're born into ignorance. Really, what do you know? Even as just forgetting for Krishna consciousness for a minute, a little child is helpless, So the mother is teaching so many things, the father is teaching, the older siblings, and just by that. And then you get systematic education and knowledge that is thought to be important for the child to fit into the, whatever social society it is. But that kind of knowledge is just part of the vast web of illusion and Maya, because it strengthens your identification with the body, which is, after all, the root of all the problems. You're identifying with the body. This is the big delusion. And it ultimately this keeps you bound to this material world. And who knows then what your fate is going to be, you see. So first, so understanding, and this again and again is stressed in the Bhagavatam especially, that the human form of life is so precious. Like I chanted that little verse from Rishabdev, at the end of the class last night. Don't waste this precious human life, dear friend, by working hard for hoggish happiness. Through bhakti yoga, worldly life transcend and learn to taste divine love's endless bliss. Now, if that was just an imagination, you wouldn't have thousands and thousands of people actually doing it and tasting it. So whatever we experience in Krishna consciousness, even just some wonderful kirtan, festival, or something that gives us a little taste, we should know that that's just a hint of the unlimited happiness to come. And it's not dependent on the senses. I mean, the senses are essential for becoming Krishna conscious, but ultimately it's just the soul and Krishna. And if you can remain conscious of Krishna, you're always glorifying and praying and reaching out, then you can become very tolerant. And this is the things that eventually inevitably happen in this material world. And you can maintain your tight, hold on Krishna's lotus feet, and that ultimately successfully leave this body. This is the final exam for all of us. It's going to happen. No sense denying it. But it can. We've seen even amongst devotees. They oftentimes they ask me to chant for them, and so I've been present quite a few bedsides. And some are different than others, but there's some are very, very peaceful, very, very peaceful. It's not, because I also saw there's a Krishna arranged for me to be in the hospital, work in the hospital for a year, and in one of the functions in the hospital where you see a lot of people die, which is come with the oxygen 999, up on You know, in 310, there's a run up to 310 with an bamboo bag, and oftentimes they didn't make it. So it's just like just a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety and fear because people don't know what's happening, what's going to happen, you know. And let's face it, in the hospital they have what they call terminal restlessness, which is really people seeing the dogs and the Yamadutas, you know, getting those hints. You know about that? So that's why they're always sedated, you know, which is the worst thing you want to be, is sedated at that critical moment. The best thing is to be surrounded by devotees chanting and reminding you of Krishna, which I helped out a little bit over the years. Okay, yes?
I don't know, I heard from somewhere that at the last moment, generally the hearing power is not there.
The hearing isn't there?
Not there.
Uh-huh.
People can't hear anything. That is the first thing it goes somewhere top and something like that. From the, it sees everything. The soul, like I heard it from the people who
came back.
Yeah,
had near death.
Exactly.
Yeah. I never heard that before. I mean, I guess there's near death and there's near death. I mean, you get really near death probably. Because I mean, you know, your classic thing is, I was up at the ceiling. You know, someone has a heart attack and he's really, you know, and then doctors are all working on it, you know, and they could definitely see what's going on. But I think there was also some record of them hearing what's going on, right? Yeah. Anyway, that's the way Prabhupada arranged it, you know, for him, to chant Hare Krishna, constantly be chanting Hare Krishna. And when the end came, it was the whole chorus, you know, filled up in his room and chanting like anything. So it's, yeah, but you know, it's going to come, obviously, and therefore it makes sense to try to be as Krishna conscious as possible, to see everything. To see every moment of your light in that light, you know, which and it's a fact. Like this verse, I think it was this morning. Deheshti mangsurudire mivatam chajasva. It was taught to me by Mahavishnu Maharaj. Don't love the body, just a bag of flesh and blood and bone. You know, love. In other words, love God, not the bod. Right. Don't love the body, just a bag of flesh and blood and bone. Give up your sense of ownership for wife and kids and home. Don't give them up, but don't think that these are mine, you know, and I can enjoy it. No, you're a steward for them, and you're all helping each other to be Krishna conscious. At every moment, see that this world totters on destruction. And you know, if you're brave enough to read the news, or you know, the utter disaster of climate change. Does anyone in this room not believe in climate change? I mean, just living here in San Diego, you can see, has the climate changed? Definitely. And so, you know, and that can bring disaster. You know, these fires and that happen in LA, a result of climate change. You know, the water is all drying up. I read the rivers are drying up. The Colorado, you know, we depend on the Colorado River here a lot. So all of these things are going on, and so we should really desire. Yeah, you know. I mean, this is a great impetus. Let me see if I can get out of here. I know I'm going to die, but I don't want to come back. You know. So how can I do that? Oh, okay. Well, the most practical way is to become Krishna conscious. Then you can go back home, back to Godhead. Not just to you know, not suffer, but to really be immersed in the ultimate happiness and bliss that's there. We have to have faith in that. All the acharyas say, yes, it's, you know, in its description. So we should, all right, so it's time for a little poem. Is that okay? You have a question? Go ahead.
I have a request.
A request? Okay.
Who stole my butter?
I don't know. I really don't know.
I want that one.
All right, so this is a verse by Bhagavan Thakur. I think you've all heard it before, but it's important to remember, I taught this to Bhakta Bronson, which is Balaram at age 18 when he first joined. Nitam navanava nitam kenita pitam payakwame murari iti samudhi latantam puma balam namami gopalam Who stole my butter? Who drank my milk? And where can my flute be found? I bow to the cowherd child who shouts these words as he rolls on the ground. Now, you're going to send that up on YouTube?
I just need a pronunciation. I'm gonna learn that.
Oh, okay. It's in the poetry file. You can, okay. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.